Guys, happy Friday. Welcome to my channel. I am so glad that you're here, man. Today is such a good video. I'm so stoked. For those of you that are new, my name is Orly. What's up? Welcome to the DIY Designer. I do great DIY fashion. I release videos every Friday and I'm starting to do them like bonus ones on Sunday, which is super fun. So hopefully you'll subscribe and stay tuned for all of that good stuff. So today, we are doing sweatshirt upcycles, like taking basic, boring, simple sweatshirts that you already own or that you found at a thrift store for a few bucks or whatevers, and turning them into incredible pieces that seriously look like they belong in like a fancy boutique. They're still cozy and smushy and yummy and all of those wonderful things, but they've got a little something to them that makes them special. I am so stoked. I can't wait to share. Every single thing that I do can be no-sew if you don't know how, and I will walk you through it even if I am sewing it myself. I hope that you guys enjoy this. If while you're watching it, you do enjoy it, I hope you'll subscribe and share it with a friend. Let's get right into this first one. I really wanted to do this sort of like shoulder cutout situation because I just think it's a really simple way of adding a little bit of femininity. It's just showing a little bit of skin, but you still have that like relaxed, cool vibe of a hoodie. So I'm actually gonna do it on a hoodie that I found at Walmart. It was in the men's section and it was a size large, but it was like a thin material, really soft. So I thought this would be perfect for it. Not only am I gonna show you how to do the cutout, but I am also gonna show you how to crop a sweatshirt while maintaining the ribbing at the bottom. All right, so right here is the shoulder seam. This is the area that I'm gonna do my cutout. Now, this sweatshirt is awesome because it's gonna be perfectly contained between that hood seam and the shoulder seam, meaning that I don't even need to bother doing any kind of clean finish corner detail. It's gonna go right up to that edge. Now, I created a mark for myself to know that I didn't wanna go any further than that because it's sort of weird with cutouts like this. They spread open on themselves. So you always wanna cut it out a little more narrow than you think because you can always go back and do more. But basically, you're gonna start from zero, slope down to maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches and go back up to zero. That's it. That is our cutout. Now, before you cut any more, you're gonna wanna try it on. It's perfect in the back, but I feel like I could maybe take out another like 3/4 of an inch to an inch in the front so that you can really see that nice shoulder pop. That's what you want, that like pointiest part of your shoulder, you want that to show. Now, I'm also going to be taking this binding on the bottom when I hem it, but we'll do that in a second. So right now I'm using my fingers to make sure that I'm only cutting one layer at a time. Always use your hands so you can feel what you're cutting through. It sort of guides you. And you can see I just shaved off a teeny bit, making sure to merge back in with my original sort of line. And now we're gonna do the hem. So basically you're gonna fold it up and it's gonna fold down. So however high you want it to go, you're gonna be folding it like this. Look, I'm gonna go up past that front pocket all the way up so that when it folds down, I remove that pocket entirely. So you basically just wanna fold your sweatshirt in half like this. However much you wanna take out, you're gonna pin it into place. And for me, pretty much always with sweatshirts, I like the front to be a little bit more cropped than the back. So this is the back. Instead of having it up there, I'm gonna slide it down a little bit so that my back is shorter than or rather the opposite. My back is longer than my front. You can actually see it if you're looking at the sweatshirt here. The right side is the front of my sweatshirt, and that's why what I'm taking in is more. The left side is the back of my sweatshirt, and that's why what I'm taking in is less. The way it has that natural slope. Now, when you sew it, you want to make sure to put your needle right into the seam that already exists. So drop your needle down and you're basically just going to be sewing following the existing seam that's already there. When I fold it down, it's just going to look like it had always been done that way. You could always go in with a top stitch after if you want, but really you kind of need to pull. If your binding is more narrow than your sweatshirt like mine is and like most are, you're going to need to pull almost like elastic. That way it's going to evenly distribute any of those extra gathers. Try it on. If it fits you right, you're going to go in and cut off all that excess. I would leave yourself about, maybe 1/2 inch of seam allowance so that at the end you can fold it up and top stitch it down. This is a super important step. This is the ironing part of it. By the way, I love these ironing mats. If you don't have an ironing board or don't have the space for it, I'll link this little guy below. But basically, you're going to want to make sure to push the seam allowance up towards the neck and press it really high heat, pressing it to make sure that any of those little gathers or pleats that you did have, because the binding was a little more narrow than the body, get sort of pressed out. You just sort of iron them and they I don't know, it like flattens them out, and it makes it look much more professional, like it was done and always created this way. And you can see how nice and clean it looks. It really makes it look like this is how the sweatshirt always was, as opposed to just cutting it. All right, on to the next one. This is so great. So I went to my favorite Valley Value Thrift, which is a thrift store in my neighborhood. And it's like so huge that I always find a million things. And I found this great men's sweatshirt. It's like a charcoal gray, super thick and heavy. It was a little long and tight at the bottom. So I'm gonna show you how to crop it, this time just with scissors. And then I went to downtown and I went to my man, Benjamin. You guys know Benjamin, Imperial Bead and Trim, my dude. So he has this whole wall of really cool patches, like letter patches and shapes. And I saw these stars and I thought maybe I would do a bunch of stars on this charcoal gray. It would be really cool. Again, super simple with like a raw frayed hem. That's what we're gonna do. It's so easy. Let's do it. All right, so start off by just unpacking all of your stars so you know what you're dealing with. This is what these guys look like. It's sort of like a gummy glue on the backside, and it's an iron-on. So when it heats up, that glue will melt going right into your shirt. Now, I started showing how to crop a sweatshirt properly by cutting it, and I realized my camera wasn't on, so I'll kind of reverse engineer it. Basically, what I'm doing right now is I'm cutting the sweatshirt, obviously folded in half, but it's not folded in half like normal, where you're looking at the front and the back is on the back side. It's folded in half like on its side. So what's closest to me is the front of the sweatshirt, and what I'm cutting right now is the back. This is the best way to cut a sweatshirt because you guarantee to be cutting the front at the same time and the back at the same time. So that's the front and that's the back. By cutting it this way, it means that I'm perfectly even. So if I do want my back to be a little longer, that's how I cut it. And it makes sure that it's nice and even because I'm cutting all the front at once and all the back at once. Now, this particular sweatshirt had these pockets, so I'm just gonna cut out the little like tabs that are there. I can sew closed the pockets, but really it almost just looks like two little like slits on the side, which I like, so I'm gonna leave it. This is the fun part. You get to design and put them wherever you want. If your sweatshirt has a stain or something you're working around, just make sure to always put something there and kind of work around it so you've always got coverage. I played with a million different ideas. I wasn't sure what I was gonna do, but ultimately this is the look that I liked. Sort of top left shoulder down to the bottom right hip, and I love the way that looked. Now I'm using a little bit of Fabri-Tac, and that is basically just replacing the pins. Instead of pinning these into place, I'm gluing them. And that's because I'm gonna wanna actually iron them from the back side. That's how I'll get most access to that glue on the back of the patch. But if I just pinned them, when I flipped it inside out and ironed them, those pins could get sort of stuck in the glue and be really hard to pull out. So by adding just a tap of glue into each star, it basically pins them in place. Now I can delicately flip my sweatshirt inside out and I have access to the back side so I can heat up the glue more easily. At first, I thought this was the right idea. I put a protective cloth in between my two layers so that while I ironed, I wouldn't like accidentally get any glue or anything on the backside of my sweatshirt. You can see though, it's getting stuck to the napkin. So this actually isn't the right thing to do. What I realized is you want it on a hard surface. My countertop on my island is perfect. Not only that, because it's not gonna glue itself to that, you need to leave it for like a long time. These things generally are meant for industrial irons, and so it gets much higher heat. So I literally put it on the highest heat and I just left it on there. You obviously wanna make sure that your sweatshirt, the actual material of your sweatshirt, can handle high heat. Mine totally can, it's super thick, 100% cotton. Once I leave it for a while, pick it up, move it to the next, and leave it there. You'll be able to tell when it's fully fused and when it needs a little bit more. This guy has been fully fused, and so one last detail I wanted was to like shred out my bottom. I think it looks really cool to have the little dangly shreds on the bottom. It looks really awesome with the stars. Another thing is I cut the cuffs off, and that's because this sweatshirt was like really tight at the cuffs, and it was just like uncomfortable. So this was a men's sweatshirt, which means the sleeves are longer anyway. So I cut off the cuff and then I frayed out the edge as well, and we're done. All right, next up, this is a trend that you either love or you hate. And personally, I actually like it a lot more on a sweatshirt than I do on a tee. And that's the padded shoulder sweatshirt or tee. Now, I saw this tie-dye one and I was just like, damn it, that's cool. And it's really easy to do. But I just think that it works much better on a sweatshirt because it's got that structure and it sort of feels like it should be a little bit more oversized. Let's do that one. All right, so I kind of played around with one shoulder and I'm gonna show you the other. Now, if you watched my t-shirt hacks video, you know that when I did the shirt version of this, I put my shoulder pad in backwards. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it the right way this time around. You want the straight part to be on the outside and the rounded part to be by the inside of your neck. So basically all I'm doing is pinning it in just so I know how far out I want it. Pin it in place, and now this is how you're gonna pull up the sleeve. You're basically gonna like tuck it, tuck it, tuck it. You like grab it, I'm gonna show you again. You sort of let it down, pull it, tuck it, use your fingers and tuck it in until that shoulder seam is invisible. You wanna pull it in just enough that you can't see it. That's what creates this little shoulder pad detail. Yes, it's gonna shorten the length of the sleeves, so if you don't want your sleeves to be shorter, make sure you're starting with an extra large sweatshirt. Now, once I have everything pinned into place, it's a two-part process. First part is glue. I'm adding just a little bit of glue on each side of the shoulder pad just to kind of fuse it together. I wouldn't only glue it, although you could, you just need to add a lot more glue. I'm gonna hand sew the other detail, but basically a little glue on either side and then use your hands to kind of like smush it and create a rounded shape. Give it about 15 minutes to dry. Once it's dry, we're gonna do the hand sewing part. There is not much hand sewing at all, but it does make a huge difference, I think. So take your needle, and first thing I'm doing is I'm coming up right through that shoulder seam. I wanna come up right in that seam so you can't even see the stitch. I'm gonna go up and right back down, creating little tacks all along that shoulder seam. What this is doing is it's not only attaching my shoulder pad to my sweatshirt, but at the same time, it's tacking down that pleat. See that big pleat that we created when we tucked our sleeve in? I'm also attaching that. But we don't only want to attach it along that shoulder, we want to attach it all the way up and around, and that's what I'm doing here. So I'm grabbing a little bit of my sweatshirt and a little bit of my shoulder pad. Loop, de-loop, 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 until that entire pleat all the way across the shoulder pad is attached to it on the bottom so it's not gonna pull and slide out. Once that one's done, there's only one more part to do. And what's really important is that you're not going through the sweatshirt. So take a look on the back side. It's right where those pins are. I'm going in through the back part of my sweatshirt. I'm grabbing the meat of my shoulder pad. You can feel it. Glide through the meat and come back up. Keep going. You want to make sure you're not going through the backside so you're actually seeing those tacks on your sweatshirt. Just grab the meat and keep going. Once you've done it, you should be able to remove all of your pins and everything is tacked into place just like it was when it was pinned. Super simple and much better to hand sew than anything else. And this guy's done. Yay! All right, and this guy is so cool, and I hope that you guys do it because it is such a useful DIY. So basically, I had this sweatshirt that I got from this like store. It's called Vivant Aesthetics. It's the girl that does my Botox. And it was like, she gifted me this sweatshirt. It's the perfect sweatshirt. It's like just drapey enough. It's really lightweight. It's cropped at the right length. The sleeve, like the whole thing is just right. But it says Vivant Aesthetics, and I just know I'm not gonna like wear that out and about in my life, but I love the fit. Conversely, I got this Lakers shirt from my buddy's clothing line. It's called Young and Reckless, my friend Drama, and I love the graphic. I'm born and raised in LA, love the Lakers. To me, the graphic was super cool, but the fit of the shirt wasn't really right. It was not quite big enough to be like cool and oversized, and it wasn't quite small enough to be like cute and fitted. It was somewhere in between. So I am going to merge these two together, and this is such a cool thing for you to do where you love the graphic but the body's not quite right. You can cut it out and use it like a patch and put it on something else. So that's what we're gonna do for this one. So useful. First thing you're gonna do is cut out your graphic. Now, I wanted about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of a border all the way around my graphic because it was gonna give me a little bit of space to actually sew it on. But if you don't want that, if you wanna cut like into the graphic, you can totally do that, however you wanna do it. I cut my entire graphic out, removed the rest of my shirt, and now on this particular graphic, I didn't really like those two lions on the bottom. I don't know, they were like kind of cheesy to me, like lounging in the sun. So I cut them out, but I did like the Lakers logo because that's just so very iconic Lakers. So I cut that off and I'm gonna just attach that onto the bottom as its own little separate patch. Now grab your sweatshirt, grab your patch, and just lay it directly on. That's literally it. I'm gonna put that little guy on the bottom. It fits perfectly in that nook. And basically what you wanna do right now is make sure that you're covering any graphic you're trying to cover and also that you're perfectly centered. If you want your graphic to be centered, I mean, you might want it to be, you know, asymmetry or whatever, but I want mine to be centered. So double check that it's centered, then pin everything into place. Before we sew this, you are gonna wanna try it on to make sure you don't wanna lower the graphic or raise it up. Make sure that it looks just right. Now, if you want this to be no-sew, you would just fabric glue this this down. You would basically put fabric glue along all the edges, tap really gently with your fingers, and that's it. But I'm sewing it. And for me, I think a zigzag stitch is the best way to go because it does two things. Number one, it attaches the graphic to the shirt, obviously, by sewing it down. But because it's a zigzag, it goes into the shirt and then it goes out to the very edge, kind of encapsulating the edge and keeping it flat. If I had just done a straight stitch all the way around the edge, that little like 1/8 of an inch that's on the outside would eventually curl up, giving away that it's a graphic. So the zigzag looks cool. You could do a pop of color. You could make it contrast. But to me, it's the best way of doing it so it lays really flat. Just take your time because once this is done, you're done. Okay, next up is a beaut. I am really, really in love with this. So I found this cream sweatshirt at Walmart. It was a couple sizes too big, but I loved it because it's kind of long and like casual and drapey. Really great fitting, simple sweatshirt. I thought that it would be awesome to add some fringe to it, but like that good fringe, you know, like that really good quality silk chainette fringe. So I went to Mood because to me, they always have the best quality. And because it's a lot more dense, sometimes it's almost the same price because I don't need to buy as much of it. So anyway, I bought 3 yards of this fringe, and originally I thought about putting it all around the hem. I thought I could kind of turn the sweatshirt into almost like a dress. But then I just didn't like the blunt edge of it, and I wanted something with a little more asymmetry. So that's what I end up doing. Again, I will show you the sewing and the no sewing version. This is such a statement. I'm absolutely obsessed. So there's the original idea I had. If you have a cropped sweatshirt, I actually think this would look really cool because the proportions would be right, but this is a little longer, so I just didn't love it. I played around with some other ideas. I was like, I could put it here, I could put it there, but ultimately I decided on this sort of asymmetric version. I liked it because it's not only going to create that asymmetry across my waist, but it's also going to do it on the hem all along the bottom, which I think will be really flattering. So basically I'm going to start there right at the top of the binding. So I grabbed my ruler and I basically created a line from the corner binding straight to the underarm. Line it up and just put like a little whatever chalk, whatever you have, you're going to cover it, so don't worry. Now, again, I am using the glue here similar to how I used it with the stars. It's basically in place of pins. I'm doing a super, super, super thin line, just enough to tack it down and hold it in place so that I can sew it. Again, if you want this to be no-sew, add twice as much glue as I just did and really take your time because that's the only thing that's going to hold it in place. The glue will be strong enough if you want to do it no-sew, but I wanted to sew it, so that's what I did. So basically, nice light dabs. Give each side maybe 10 minutes to dry before you flip it because the fringe is really heavy and you don't want it to be pulled off. Again, same exact thing on the back side. I connect a line from the binding straight to the underarm, making sure to connect where I can see it's coming around from the other side, right? It's one long piece. Take your time to pull any loose pieces and untwist it because what you want is that once you put your line of glue, it's just a simple like pull up the fringe. You don't want to have to untangle anything. Now, grab your fringe and just lay it down. Make sure to not be pulling too tight because if you're pulling tight, it could actually like create some tension on the sweatshirt and pucker. So just lay it, drop it very gently, let it lay just like it wants to. When you get to the end, give yourself about 1.5 inches of excess, put some glue, wrap around, and that's clean finished. Now, we're gonna do 2 layers. At least I'm gonna do 2 layers because I like that heavy fringe. When you're doing this, again, a super line of glue and a super thin line of glue, and really make sure to line up that edge perfectly. If you're gonna be covering your binding with some other type of trim, you don't have to be as precise, but I'm not. I'm gonna leave it just like this, so I wanna make sure that it looks like one crisp line and you can't see 2 of them. You're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna give it a minute to dry or 10. And then once it's dry, flip it. Again, it's super heavy, especially with 2 layers. So you just wanna be really careful not to let anything come apart. Now, we're obviously just gonna do the same thing. You wanna make sure to unravel any pieces that are stuck, straighten up the binding, and a nice thin layer of glue. Now, the one place you really wanna focus on is right there around the corner of the body where it wraps around. You don't wanna do it too tight because you don't want it to pucker. So just take your time. And again, this is the same thing. It's like lining it up, let it fall naturally. Don't tug on it, just let it fall. Use your fingers to tap it into place. And then you can kind of pull on your sweatshirt to make sure that nothing is restricted in any way. Cut off your excess. I measured just right. I mean, I had like 2 inches of excess. I put a little glue and then I wrapped it around the side. Now, I toyed with the idea of adding like a crystal trim, which is really pretty, but really I like the simple monochromatic look. I think it's really fresh and really modern, and I kind of want to be bling free. Now, this is the final part here. I'm just doing a zigzag stitch And again, it's doing two things. It's attaching it, obviously, but it's attaching the entire thing. So by going back and forth, it's not creating that intense indent that you would get with one straight stitch. It's sort of evenly distributing back and forth, all across that binding. And I made sure to stretch out my stitch to be the exact width of my binding. Whenever you're doing stuff like this, just always use your hands to feel for it so you can make sure that you're not sewing through anything else, the back or the binding. Once you get to the very end, you're gonna double back, securing those corners, and you're done. I love this. Blake was like detangling things for me. This is what it's like when I film at home. I've got Blake as like a pajama wearing personal assistant who half the times break things. My son is remote learning. You know, what are you gonna do? We're done though, we did it. All right, that is it. We're done. I cannot wait to model these for you. I am in love with each and every one of them. I hope that you guys learned something and enjoyed this video. If you did, I hope you'll subscribe if you're not already. And if you are subscribed, can I ask a huge favor? If you could spread the word and share this channel, man, you have no idea how much that would mean. That could be anything from like screenshotting your phone right now and sharing that on your social media or pressing the share button or just telling a friend that this channel exists. It would be so helpful and I would really appreciate it. All right, guys, I'm gonna model these. If you have any questions, comment them down below. You know I'm all up in those comments, and I will see you beautiful people next week. Mwah! Bye, guys.
Don't need to know about that. Don't need to know about that. I'll protect you with my lies. You don't need to know about that. Don't need to know about that. Just let me love you. 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 Someday you will meet the one who will put you on a throne, will put you on a throne. And I will go out on my own to see the world again. But until then